Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. I live in BC, and here in BC, I think we have one of the worst premiers you could ever imagine. On the surface, he tries to say some of the right things, and I think that people eat it up in some way because of the media support that he has. But when you look at all his connections, which are all being revealed by journalists like Sam Cooper, David Creighton talks about him. I mean, a lot of journalists have sort of uncovered what this big giraffe is all about, and it's not good. And recently, I mean, he still says the same things about alcohol.
For our first of many steps, effective today, I have directed BC liquor sales to immediately stop buying American liquor from red states. Liquor store employees will be removing the most popular of these brands from government store shelves.
Americans, you've got a crappy leader. It's too bad. And why is he doing this to himself? And he's just sort of not still addressing the problem that we have a fentanyl czar who has crickets. I've not heard from this guy. And I talked to the longshoreman that comes to my work again today. I said, so what? Have they beefed up stuff down at the ports? What's going on? He's like, no, we haven't done a thing. It's still the same. And I was talking to him about smuggling the fentanyl. He's like, it's still the same. It is still as easy. You got all these containers. You can't possibly check every nook and cranny on the container. On the ships, it's going to take a month. The containers are going to be stuck there for 30 days. And I'm like, you're not going to be able to get the product out. He goes, no, this is just not going to happen. And they've done nothing to beef up checks. They're still doing the same minimal checks. They still have the big scanner thing that he was telling me about. But there's been nothing beefed up there at the ports. So that still is the same. So if you're Trump, aren't you kind of like, I told you to clean this stuff up. You appointed a czar, but what have you done? I know that Mexico has sent troops to the border. They've poured money into it. Mexican President Scheinbaum. The name does not sound Mexican, but I guess maybe that's her married name. I don't know. Agreed to send 10,000 troops to the U.S.-Mexico border. And then in Canada here, we've announced under like Trudeau, Trudeau did. Now it's Carney, but he announced it's still the same. He implemented a $1.3 billion border plan and a new fentanyl czar, which, like I said, haven't heard a thing from, right? And so then, we've had these exemptions go, these Trump, I mean, it's like crying wolf with the tariffs. They come, they go, they come, they go. It's like it's sort of hard to take them seriously with all this back and forth. I found the Doug Ford stuff so funny. Doug Ford ain't built so Ford tough after all. David Eby, his approach is completely wrong, but I want to draw your attention to this article by this guy, Dan Knight, and I'll link it in the description. I love the way he wrote this. There's a bill that David Eby wants to put through. David Eby's Bill 7 is a big government power grab disguised as free trade. David Eby's government is at it again. You have to give them credit. When they seize power, they don't do it halfway. They wrap it up in noble language, throw in a few buzzwords about stability and protection, and expect the public to nod along while they rewrite the rules in their favor. Enter Bill 7, the Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act, a piece of legislation so brazenly authoritarian that even Ottawa might blush.
This is a significant piece of legislation in that it gives regulation-making authority to government that does not require it to go through the legislature immediately. And so given the unique nature of these powers, it's important that there are checks and balances in place, and I'm going to ask the Attorney General to walk you through what those are.
The Economic Stabilization Tariff Response Act was tabled in the legislature early today, as the Premier mentioned. If passed, it will allow government to have increased tools and authority to respond to trade threats from the United States. There are some features of this bill that are important to emphasize. This is a broad piece of enabling legislation. It empowers government to respond quickly and take action in a wide range of areas. The legislation will allow us to respond in a timely fashion to new threats as they emerge. This legislation is temporary. The powers are time limited and will sunset no later than mid-2027.
The bill is being sold as a response to U.S. tariffs, particularly those imposed by President Trump. The story goes like this. The big bad Americans are unfairly targeting BC's economy, so the government needs new tools to protect jobs, streamline trade, and ensure local procurement. Sounds reasonable until you actually read the bill, because what it really does is give David Eby's government unchecked power over trade, government spending, taxation, and even the ability to rewrite laws at will. This article, you must read it. It's fantastic, but it's basically, it gives him carte blanche to do what he wants to do with complete impunity. The rules don't apply to him. If there's a conflict or inconsistency between an enactment and a directive issued under a subsection, the directive prevails. That's not a trade policy. That's a blank check for cronyism. If the government wants to hand a contract to a politically connected firm, they don't have to go through competitive bidding. They can just issue a directive and call it a day. And if you're a business owner wondering whether you can sue if you get shut out unfairly, you might want to read Section 8. No legal proceedings for damages. There's a little more here, but basically the translation is they are legally untouchable. No accountability, no oversight, no legal recourse for the BCers, for people like us. And even if you do find a way to sue, Section 9 ensures that taxpayers will cover the government's legal fees. They've thought of everything. This really is an eye-opening article you must read. This is sick. This is David Eby wanting to act with complete impunity, doing whatever he wants to do, changing things as he goes, waving a magic wand to say, we're going to do this because of tariffs. We're going to do this because of Trump, and you're going to eat it. And do you want to fight back? Well, you won't be able to, because we've changed all the laws, and you don't have a chance. And we'll go to court on taxpayer money. You can go on your own dime. Anyway, back to the tariffs and back to Trump and back to fentanyl, which is amazing. I mean, think about it. Fentanyl is something that, it's so pervasive in cocaine and all kinds of drugs, and it will poison you and kill you like right away. Drugs are drugs. Illicit drugs are illicit drugs. A lot of times you can survive, right? People do cocaine for years, but this is something that's like, you will die. You are being poisoned by the people who are making it. I think that fentanyl is a bioweapon. And so Trump is saying, Mexico has a problem. Yeah, things are going back and forth between the US and Canada. But Canada, you are not innocent. So fix your problem. But we're not doing that. And Canada is in the eyes of the world. I mean, we're on the map, but we are struggling to show ourselves as a strong country because people can see right through everything we're doing. And if you listen to anybody who has a brain, people like Victor Davis Hanson has great insight into what's going on in Canada.
Problems he's having with both Canada and Mexico. But let's look at Canada first. He's in hot water with the Canadians. He's aroused a dormant nationalism. Trudeau, who will step down as Prime Minister and hand the Liberal Party directorship and with it the Prime Ministership to Mark Carney, was headed toward defeat. That whole party was headed toward defeat. When Donald Trump started to troll them, sort of goad them in bombastic style that they should be the 51st state in the Union of the United States, they got very angry about it. Donald Trump does have a point on a number of issues. Number one, Canada runs up a $50 billion surplus with us. It usually has, except for a few years, always run a surplus. But it's getting bigger and bigger. It's based on a couple of facts. It exports to us a lot of gas and oil and electricity, and it protects in two different ways, both with tariffs and with state subsidies, its agricultural and timber industries. A second issue that Donald Trump has mentioned is the open border. Now, usually we just think of border problems with Mexico, but lately there's been some fentanyl, hardly as much as Mexico. So Trump wants that border secure. Third, Canada is a member of NATO. 2014, there was an agreement that all NATO countries would supply 2% of their GDP and defense spending. Canada is one of the lowest. It's 1.3. This is astounding because in World War II, the Canadian Navy was the third largest in the world. Juno Beach on D-Day was reserved for the 1st Canadian Army, and they're not meeting their NATO commitments. And to be frank, in some ways, they're subsidized by the United States with our North American NORAD shield. And they know that if any country was to threaten Canada, and I think that would be unlikely, the United States would step in and shield it and protect it. We don't want Canada as a 51st state, and Donald Trump knows that. And art of the deal, as I said, trolling style, he knows that. Canada is a very left-wing country, socialized medicine, state-run industries. All Canada has to do is lower its tariffs on certain American products and get the surplus down from 50 to 20 billion. And then it's got an excellent record of shipbuilding, and we have a problem in the Arctic Circle with China and Russia infringing on the North American parts of the Arctic, and all Canada would have to do is revive its hallowed shipbuilding industry. Why doesn't it just build 20 icebreakers? They used to be one of the best countries in the world in that type of shipbuilding and operation.
But you don't hear this talk in the media. You don't hear this reported to you. You don't hear this. This is not part of common knowledge. And that's why misinformation prevails. And I've said it for 5 years now, since global news kicked my little butt out the door. The biggest purveyors of misinformation to this day still, and probably has been for many, many years, are the mainstream media, because that's all they know how to do. And they wouldn't even have that job if they had a different opinion. Please like the video if you like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I'll catch you in the next one.